Hi, this is Jason from Horrific Nightmares. And it's finally here. Friday the 13th week. Yes, we are on the road to Friday the 13th. One of my favorite days of the year. Along with Halloween, of course. But I don't think I've ever stated in any of my videos that Friday the 13th is actually my favorite horror franchise. Of course, followed by, and not too far behind, would be the Halloween franchise. Those are definitely my two favorites, but I think that the Friday the 13th franchise edges out Halloween just a bit. And as I'm posting videos this week, I wanted to try to post a video a day on the Friday the 13th subject. So, what better way to start out than with a ranking of the Friday the 13th films? Now, we have a lot to get to, so let's get started. Coming in last is Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. Probably going to be talking about this one more than any of the other Friday the 13th films, because this is one film I actually despise. I really can't stand this film. I haven't watched it a whole lot since I originally saw it in the movie theater with I believe she was my fiance at the time, soon to be wife, and let's just say at the end of the movie, well, I watched the Horror Man's video yesterday, the ranking of the Friday the 13th series, and he had mentioned that there had been talking that there were a scuttlebutt in the horror community was that there was going to be a Freddy vs. Jason film. Now, I never knew that. So, it's funny how you can watch the same film as someone else, but have a completely different outlook on it. Now, the Horror Man, he, and I respect his opinion, believe me, I do. He loved when Freddy's hand came up out of the ground at the end and pulled down the mask. Me, not knowing that there was going to be a Freddy vs. Jason, or never really hearing about it, I just felt like they treated the whole thing like a complete joke. Probably because I didn't know that they were planning on doing a Freddy vs. Jason. But, I mean, I was almost literally in tears by the end of the film. I just felt like they destroyed one of my franchises that I love so much. And I know they were trying to do something different with it. But the way I look at it, they tried to do something different with Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, and I actually liked it. This one, I couldn't stand. I didn't feel that Jason was actually a part of the film hardly at all. Yeah, I think enough talking about this film. I really don't like it. I do have plans with this film tomorrow, and you'll hear about that, of course, with my video. I'm not going to put it underneath the car and roll over it or anything like that, so you guys don't have to worry about that. But anyway, coming in last, Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. Terrible. Coming up next is Freddy vs. Jason. And I went to look for my copy of Freddy vs. Jason in the basement yesterday as I was planning on doing this video today. I actually couldn't find it. I don't know if I sold it or if I just misplaced it. But I do have it on this Nightmare on Elm Street set that I've had for quite a while. But now I do like this film. I did go to see this with my wife. She took me to see it because I was all amped up to see it. And while I like Freddy and I like the Nightmare on Elm Street films, they don't hold a candle to the Friday the 13th franchise, in my opinion. And this is going to sound kind of weird, but when Freddy was picking on Jason and throwing stuff at him and sticking him with rods and all the kind of stuff that happened in this film, I kind of felt like a friend of mine was getting picked on. I know that sounds weird, but that's just kind of how I feel. So that's probably why this comes in, as low as it does in my countdown. And like the horror man, when I watched this video yesterday, I do believe that Freddy does get the better of Jason in this film, and that kind of irritated me as well. But anyway, that is Freddy vs. Jason. Coming up next is Jason X, and I do love this film. You guys have probably seen this in if you've watched my top 25 modern day slashers. I do love this film. I love the kills in it. The fact that they went into space doesn't really bother me. Actually, it didn't bother me in any of the series, Leprechaun or Hellraiser. And if I'm forgetting one, sorry. But I do really like this film. I was talking to someone on YouTube the other day. The liquid nitrogen kill is probably one of the best in history. And when they do the holographic bit, when they try to distract him with the campers and the girls taking off their tops, and he's beating them one with the other in their sleeping bags, that's one of the purely classic scenes I've ever seen in a film. I love it. But anyway, that is Jason X. Really cool film. Coming up next, and this is going to hurt you, Joe, is Friday the 13th, Part 3. Like I'm saying, I love all the Friday the 13th films, of course, except for Jason Goes to Hell. This is a fun film. I just feel it is lesser than. I know Jason gets his hockey mask in this film, but it just doesn't seem like it's made with the quality that some of the other Friday the 13th films are made with. And the actors in it are, I'll say, worse than normal as far as cheesiness and overall acting. While I do like the film, that's why it ranks so low in my opinion. But that's Friday the 13th Part 3. And I actually do have the Blu-ray copy of this. I was trying to think. It was last year I was in a pawn shop and I bought the Friday the 13th Part 3 Blu-ray because it had occurred to me that I had never seen Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. So I finally got to see it in 3D. And that was pretty cool. Gave me a headache, but it was pretty cool. But anyway. Coming up next, Friday the 13th, the remake. I know you guys have seen me show my Blu-ray copy of this. This is my actual DVD copy. I love this film, and I stated in a different video that my daughter took me to see this for Father's Day, because I was so psyched to see this. So it does hold a special place in my heart for that reason, but the kills are brutal. The guy who plays Jason, and now I'm forgetting his name, of course, I'm drawing a blank, but I thought he did a really, really good job in this film. So, that is Friday the 13th, the remake. Coming up next, let's see, it's Friday the 13th, Jason Takes Manhattan. I love this film. I think it's really cool. The only thing that is a little bit of a drawback to me in this film is the actual ending itself. I thought it was a bit weird. But this has some of the neatest kills in it, some of the most comical kills in it. And this actually also holds a special place in my heart, which I've said in one of my other videos, that a friend of mine who's no longer with us, that I grew up with and went to high school with, I took him to see Star Trek 5, I believe, or 6. It was in 1989, and it was right after we graduated. And I remember he and I sitting in the movie theater, and this trailer came on, and I think he and I were the only two that stood up and cheered um, and laughed hysterically at the trailer. But just good memories for me. So. But that is Friday the 13th Part 8. Coming up next, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. Um, I love this film, of course, the first film where Kane Hodder is Jason in it. Um, really, really cool film. I like the whole telekinesis thing. I like the uh, Weekend at Bernie's guys in this film. Just a really cool film. I do love this film. Saw this in the theaters as well. So coming up next is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. This film is an oddity to me. I've liked this film ever since I first saw it. I actually saw this in the theaters. I actually liked this film when it wasn't cool to like this film, I guess. Because this film used to take quite a bit of a beating. This and Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I can honestly say that I've liked both of those films ever since I was younger and I first saw them. But Friday the 13th Part 5 is a pure slasher film. The Horror Man said that yesterday, and I do agree with him. This is how you do a slasher film. There's no doubt in my mind. It is so cool, and I still think the scene with Tommy Jarvis fighting the hillbilly guy, that just, he really opened up a can of whoop ass on him, and to me, it still is really cool to this day. But that is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Coming up next, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. This is such a cool film. I saw this in the theaters as well. I actually saw 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the remake, and Freddy vs. Jason all in the theaters. Part 4, I was a little too young and couldn't find anybody to take me, but all the rest I've seen in the actual theater itself. And this was such a fun movie-going experience. So many people were into this film. It was a lot of fun. The James Bond ripoff beginning, it's classic. So, that's Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Coming up next, Friday the 13th Part 4, The Final Chapter. This is a really cool film, and I know I don't like it as much as some of the other Friday films and some of my other fellow YouTubers, but I really, really do like this film. Corey Feldman is really good in this. You got the Doublemint twins in it, really cool. Crispin Glover, and the guy from Hell Night. Now I'm drawing a blank. Of course I'm drawing a blank. But this is a really, really cool film. The kills are outstanding. Tom Savini just knocks this one right out of the park. But that's Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Coming up next, the original Friday the 13th. This film is so cool. The deaths in this film are, I think, iconic. I think before then you really didn't see this kind of brutality in a film, or at least in a film that, was in the movie theaters. But it's just a fantastic film. Definitely one of my favorites. Comes in number 2, so that's pretty darn good. And my favorite Friday the 13th film should be no surprise. It made my top ranking on my, of course, top 25 80 slasher films is Friday the 13th Part 2. Amy Steele is awesome in this. I love the Baghead Jason in this, directly from, taking from The Town That Dreaded Sundown, The Phantom, the homage to Mary Obaga and the Bay of Blood that is in this film. It's just awesome. All the kills are incredible. First time I ever saw a handicapped guy, not that I always wanted to see a handicapped guy get killed, but it's just so brutal. Such an iconic scene. Amazing. But that is number 1, Friday the 13th Part 2, and my favorite Friday the 13th film. Love to hear what you guys have to say and what your rankings are. Wanted to do this because, of course, Friday the 13th is right around the corner. And if you like what you hear, hit that like button, hit the sub button, comment below. Love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, guys, peace.